Member for Banks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'm very pleased to hear that the member for Kingston Smith purports to understand the need for a sustainable budget, because that's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to talk about tonight, and how important it is for the people of my electorate. Because the budget, Madam Speaker, really marks the end of an era, and that era is an era of irresponsibility. It is a clear contrast between a previous government that always spent like it was someone else's money, money that was just sort of there, Madam Speaker, and a government that will treat every dollar of taxpayers' money with respect. And I think there is a really important contrast here, because I don't believe that members opposite fundamentally understand how important this is. I do not believe that members opposite are truly committed to running a sustainable budget and truly believe that that is a critical issue for the future of the nation. When you believe that, it influences the way you behave as a government, and it means that you are cautious about how you spend. It means you don't do things like blow $11 billion on failed border protection policies. You don't go from having $45 billion in the bank to a couple of billion dollars of debt within just 5 or 6 years. So I do have this sneaking suspicion, Madam Speaker, that members opposite just see numbers on a page, whole bunch of graphs, but don't actually, really in their guts, believe that budget sustainability is important. And it's interesting to note that if you go right back through Labor's recent history in government, you've got to go back to 1989 to find a time when they actually ran a budget surplus. So you'd say, 1 year you'd say, oh, well, look, it might have been 1 year. It might have been a particularly difficult year. 2 years would be unfortunate. But 12, 13 years, that's just a way of life, Madam Speaker. That is just a structural way of life and a structural way of thinking on the opposite side, and it's a structural way of thinking which doesn't address structural issues in the budget. And they're not easy to address, those issues, of course, Madam Speaker, and the government, of course, is very conscious of the impact that addressing those structural issues does have. But the fact is, you can't pretend those structural issues don't exist if you want to be a serious government that is governing in the interests of the people of the nation. One approach is to fritter away money, to never see a spending program that you didn't like, to think of more and more creative uses of bureaucracy. And the other is to use government funding in a sensible way to build assets that deliver for the economy over time. It's about investment as opposed to frittering money away. So infrastructure, Madam Speaker, the West Connects, a fantastic project for the people of my electorate in Banks. It's going to save more than 20 minutes on the trip to the city from Beverly Hills, and that is a huge benefit in terms of productivity in our economy, and of course also in terms of family life in our electorate, of people getting home quicker. The Medical Research Fund, which was announced last night, a historic fund, and a tremendous example again of the difference between sending $900 cheques off to people that may or may not be in the country and taking government resources and building for the future. We're at our best as a nation when we confront the problems we face. The Howard government did it. To its credit, the Hawke and Keating governments did it on occasion, but the Rudd-Gillard governments never did it. Sometimes they just avoided the problem. Sometimes, often, they actively made it worse. And in my electorate, Madam Speaker, people are very cautious about how they spend their money. They value the work that they do. They do not simply throw money around like drunken sailors, because if you do that as a family or as a small business, you get into trouble, and so do governments. And that is why it is so important for the people of my electorate in Banks, and of course for all the people of Australia, that we behave in a grown-up fashion, manage the budget like adults, That's precisely what we're doing, and the people of Australia deserve no less.
Yeah.